Meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice to the public of this meeting, the time, the date, place, and the agenda was published as a legal notice September the 3rd, 2018 in the Aiken Standard. Notice to contiguous property owners were mailed and public notice signs were posted on the properties on about September the 5th, 2018. Notice of this meeting was also sent to the city clerk for posting on the Finance Administration Building Notice Board and the Municipal Building Notice Board at least 24 hours before this meeting. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board knowingly providing false information that's according to Section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. Each infraction is a separate offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. To the board, we do not have at this meeting minutes of the August meeting, the August 28th meeting, nor do we have the final orders from the August 28th meeting. I will ask the city to read into the records the reason why we do not have those available.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as you're aware, the Planning Department mans 3 different boards or staffs 3 different boards, the Board of Zoning Appeals, Design Review Board, and Planning Commission. Due to the amount on some of those agendas, we've ran a little closer in time frame to finishing the orders and minutes associated with the last meeting. Instead of rushing those around and getting those to the board, we wanted some additional time to review those to make sure the orders were consistent with the minutes. So we will have those to you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Your explanation is acceptable. Therefore, we'll move directly into new business. I call your attention to application 19-93004. That's a petition from the City of Aiken Park and Recreation Tourism Department. They're requesting a variance for the height and the area of a freestanding sign, and this is property that's located in an RS 15 zone at 1700 Whiskey Road to the city. Has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
No inquiries.
Thank you. Presentation?
So the application, as you stated, is at 1700 Whiskey Road. This is the Odell Weeks Community Center in Virginia Acres Park. The sign along Whiskey Road that was previously existed, again, this is zoned RS15. It's been traditionally, most city parks have been residentially zoned. I believe actually right now currently all city parks are residentially zoned. And so along those lines, this park is as well, even though it's somewhat in the middle of a commercial stretch of Whiskey Road. The signs that previously existed, there were 2 signs on the Whiskey frontage. Typically, the city would only allow 1, so these are legal non-conforming signs as is, or as was, due to the size of the sign and the fact that there were 2 signs there. You see on your screen there was one that had identified H. Odell Weeks Activities Center and a kind of a general recreation and parks with a message board, a manual message board on that sign. As you can see by the next photo, it was destroyed by a vehicle collision, and this, per our code, loses its legal non-conforming status. And so the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department is proposing a 46 square foot sign with electronic reader board. Electronic reader boards would be permitted by right for an institutional use such as a park or a community center per our code. So that is not in question. It's the size of the sign that would require the variance. And so within the residential district, typically monument signs are limited to 24 square feet, 8 feet in height at a maximum. And so they're requesting a 46 square foot sign. Just for comparison, it's roughly similar to the size of the larger of the two signs that previously existed on site.
I have two questions. One, normally in our package, we get as an Exhibit A, we normally get 6 responses by the applicant to review their direct response to the criteria. This only has 3. What happened to the rest? I know. Mine is short.
So it looks like there was a copying area where it was a front and back that did not get copied in Exhibit A.
I see the other board members have theirs, so
I'll say mine did not receive one either. So, however, within the staff report itself, we included verbatim the responses given to each of the individual questions. So those are, if you did not include if you do not have that second page in your packet, it is covered by the staff report what the response was. And our apologies, we didn't realize that there were some that did not include that.
Thank you. My second question, are there any changes to the sign on Two Notch Road?
No proposed changes to the Two Notch Road signage, no.
Thank you. Other questions from the board to the city?
Sir. Sir,
But
Ryan, this will be the only sign, the monument sign that had Odell Weeks Center that looks like it was some type of stone type sign, that's done away with. We'll just have this sign, or is the monument sign going back in place?
This is the sign, or roughly the dimensions of the sign. I believe individuals from Parks, Recreation, and Tourism could answer that more specifically than I could, but I think this is a general characterization of the size and type of sign. I don't think that at the time that they submitted this, they had spec'd it out specifically or gone out to procure a sign provider at that time yet.
Okay. So just one sign then? is
It's
what
one
they're
sign.
They're asking approval of?
Correct.
Not 2 like they had before?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. The only thing that I'm not seeing in the specifications is this new sign placement. Will it go exactly where the previous manual lettered sign is going to go as far as eye line with traffic? Would be my question as far as placement. Obviously, both are not going to be there, so will it be set back?
So, yeah, again, the folks I think from Park Recreation Terms could probably address that better than I could, but it's my understanding it would go in generally the same location as those signs were. There's kind of a landscaped bed there that that kind of covered the base of the signs.
Right.
And it would be generally located in that same, I guess, landscaped island, if we call it that.
Preferably in the same place the taller of the signs were. I'm thinking of the eye line of pulling out onto
In front,
Whiskey Road.
yeah, and it's set back from Whiskey Road a bit. It would potentially, and we would have to review that as staff to ensure that it wouldn't block line of sight. There is a sight distance triangle requirement in our code that has it set back when you need to have a certain amount of sight distance for a vehicle. We would look at that as far as like the specific location of that to make sure. In this case, it's more the pedestrian traffic from the walkway that you would be blocking the sight line of rather than Whiskey Road. It's set back far enough. It's behind the walking track.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Based on the sign that was there, and maybe this can be addressed to Parks and Rec, there's power out there that they're going to tie into from the old sign, or is there going to be, will they have a need for power, and that is ditching or whatever to get the power out there to the sign?
I would probably rather have them clarify that.
Okay, great.
Excuse me,
Well, that-
when I call on you, please, we're addressing questions now to the city. Any further questions from the board to the city? Thank you. Now you may.
We're going to tie back into the existing.
Excuse me, would you read into your name and your address and your position into the minutes, please?
Yes, sir. Kim Coleman, I'm the recreation manager, and the address is 1700 Whiskey Road.
Thank you. Now you may.
Tie back into the existing power,
Okay.
exactly where it is right now.
Okay.
Will the base of the sign, you may stay, the electronic sign, would the part of the base extend into the base of the sign itself? Because it appeared in the package that the electronic portion would extend into the base of the sign. Is that correct?
No, sir.
No, it will not.
There'll be a reader board, and then the top part will light up like the previous sign.
Thank you.
It's basically an updated version of what we had there. The size of what we're having specs is actually going to be the same size as what we had existing there.
So you're going to put it on where the other 46 square foot sign was?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
same location?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Your intent then is just to have that one sign at that location, not
That's
two
correct.
signs like you had before? Just the
sign.
one. Okay.
Other questions from the board? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
Are there others to speak to the variance requests? Are there others to speak to the variance requests? Final call. Others to speak to the variance requests? Seeing, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion so we can end our period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Judy?
I move that we accept application 19-93-004 with the following conditions. Variance to section 4.410 of the zoning ordinance to a 46 square foot ground mounted sign on property at 1700 Whiskey Road, TPN 12209010001, within the landscape island at the Whiskey Road entrance to the subject property, that the sign comply with all other requirements of Chapter 4, Article 4 of the zoning ordinance regarding signs, that the final order is recorded at the Aiken County RMC office. I think that it has met all 6 of the requirements for to be placed there. And I applaud the action of having an electronic sign there, because it certainly will be more visible to the passing visitors and/or residents of Aiken.
Second.
Bud, second. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the said motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. I call your attention to application 19-93003, a special variance request representing the South Carolina Department of Education for a above-ground storage tank, and this will be located in a planned industrial zone at 449 Rutland Drive to the city. Has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
None, sir.
Presentation, please.
Application is at Aiken High School, 449 Rutland Drive. The property is zoned planned institutional, which makes it a bit unique in that some things may be waived as part of a concept plan, and other things may require variances depending on which section of the zoning ordinance the regulation is located in. In this case, it is a general requirement that unless in an industrial district, propane tanks are limited, above ground storage above ground storage tanks are limited to 660 gallons. That's kind of what you'd think of as a typical residential size of above ground storage for compressed natural gas, propane, those sorts of things. This is where the school district stores a large number of the buses, and they are converting a fair number of them in the 20 to 25 buses to propane, and would like to be able to have storage of that on site for fueling. So they are requesting a variance to it's section 435 of the zoning ordinance that limits the size of above ground storage tanks. They are requesting 2,000 gallons of storage, and they've left that. They were still examining that at the time the application was submitted as to be whether that would be 2 1,000 gallon tanks or a 2,000 gallon tank that they would be requesting. The tanks themselves have standards set forth by the state fire marshal, who does the permitting on those, and there have been other school installations of similar in nature that have been permitted by the fire marshal, so they're going along the lines of those same regulations. The specific location they're asking for is the what I would call the bus parking lot to the south side, closest to DuPont Drive, and kind of on the east end of that parking lot. I believe kind of the closest building at that point, I think it was the old cafeteria building that was there, and it's being torn down as part of the remodel. So only a portion of that wing that exists closest to the proposed location would remain after the Aiken High School renovation is done as well.
You made the statement that this is in accordance with the requirement by the state fire marshal. Do we have sign off of this from the Aiken Public Safety?
They've reviewed it, and we have staff here if you would like to ask them how they would, if and how they would review it.
Thank you. Question to the city from the board. John?
How many other schools, you mentioned other schools, have tanks located in this position or similar positions, proximities to the school itself?
I say they'd given one example to us. We didn't conduct extensive research as to what other schools would have them. We looked mostly at the actual requirements, and they gave an example of another location where they were permitted similarly. So I don't have the number. They may be able to answer that. The applicant might be able to answer that more clearly than I could.
Do we have other questions from the board to the city?
One more.
John, go ahead.
Is there any reason given to you why they chose that location?
Specifically because this is where they had planned to keep the majority of those new vehicles. So to cut down, they were looking at alternate sites away from here that the school district had access to. But as far as the specific position on the site,
Yes.
no, I was not given a specific explanation as to why that might be a better location than other locations on site.
Do we have other questions from the board to the city?
one other question, and
But-
maybe it may be directed to staff, excuse me, to staff, but based on this sketch of tank spacing and distances from buildings, and minimum distances from buildings and so forth, has your staff verified that the distances are met to comply with, say, this sketch here, or
You
any
sorry,
other
let's see
state
here.
code?
This sketch, so to
Yes,
speak.
yes.
Yeah, so we've used GIS to measure. We've not done a field verification, but using GIS, we are reasonably comfortable that it can meet
Can meet
the spacing requirements established, or at least depicted in the figure given.
Okay.
Do we have other questions to the city from the board? Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, before I call you up, may I call a representative from Aiken Public Safety up, please?
Mr. Chairman, how are you? I'm
Sit.
Brian Brazier. I serve as captain of the fire division of Aiken Public Safety.
Thank you. I was
sir.
going to ask you to read yourself into the minutes.
Yes, sir.
Have you reviewed this request from the school district?
Yes, sir.
And would you state your findings?
We support the variance request. The distances and all are fine as long as it's installed according to NFPA 58 and through the State Fire Marshal's Office regulations and the Office of School Facilities. We don't see any problems with the request.
In attachment A, which is the barriers, what's the rating for the barriers per, let's say, a 20-mile-per-hour school bus crashing into them?
You're talking about the bollards?
Yes.
It would depend on the depth of them. I believe those are 8-foot bollards with 4 foot in the ground in a hole that's bored out and filled with cement. I don't know the exact rating of how fast a vehicle couldn't go through it. But it would be pretty significant speed to get through the bollards.
So is,
Judy, go ahead.
so this is the kind of enclosure it would be in? There's no fenced in, it would just be these metal bars like this?
Well, this is in the bus parking lot, which is completely fenced in.
Right.
And my understanding with the plans of the construction at Aiken High School, with that will also have another fence around the whole facility. So there'll actually be 2 fences around this location.
So it would have a fence there around the tanks? Or around, or what do you? I don't
Around the bus
understand.
parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
You're just
ma'am.
going to double up the bus parking lot?
Yes, ma'am. As you can
Okay.
see, the bottom of this picture is where the buses enter that parking lot.
Right.
And there's a gate on the other end that they can drive out, but that is completely fenced in.
Okay.
Then the fence, then would there be another fence around the tank farm itself, or are you talking about?
Not to my knowledge, there's not. I think it's just the perimeter of the bus parking lot that has the fence around it.
Okay. During construction, I know we have code enforcers and so forth, but what will be your department's involvement during the construction to assure that they meet the state fire marshal requirements and any other
But
federal?
all the construction at the schools, we work closely with the Office of School Facilities and the State Fire Marshal's Office. They're involved in all the inspections that go on out there.
Okay.
We have a presence there, yes, sir.
Good.
I have a question for the captain.
Brenda?
The concern I have is not so much, impact or getting through the barriers. It's more of a leaking scenario where, again, I'm no expert, that's why I'm going to tap into your expertise, that the gas would settle, correct, and could drift and spread, correct, and then be an incendiary
That's possible.
potential at that point?
That's possible, depending on the size of the leak. It would take a certain proportion with the mixed air for it to find an ignition source.
But
It would be more
But in
inclined
theory-
to ignite if it was in an enclosed area.
Right, but in theory, it can, in a large enough volume, can leak, drift, and become an incendiary hazard where it's drifted to, correct?
Yes, sir, I would say anything is possible depending on the wind. Yes, sir.
And do we know the distances? I think I understand the school proximity, but homes across DuPont there, do we have some measurements there?
At closest, we measured about 250 feet to the closest home.
Okay.
Well, I know this drawing is kind of, I don't want to say deceptive, but some of those buildings are being demolished that are in close proximity to where that site is showing.
Yeah, I get the school part. It's the homes across
Yes,
DuPont,
sir.
across the drive below that I was trying to weigh a leak, drift, ignitions.
Well, the good thing about propane is
risk.
they put that chemical in it so you smell it right away.
You would hope,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes, sir.
In the event of a weekend or something like that, it's up to, you don't have really anybody at the school, it's up to neighbors to try to smell the alert. Okay, thank you.
Me, please.
John?
Captain, does a facility holding 3 times the allowed propane in that position, 90 feet from a school, does that give you pause at all?
The only thing that would concern us would be with a major leak where the tank itself had some type of ignition on it, where we would be concerned about a levy of the tank actually losing its composition. But of course, all of our guys are trained to fight that, so.
Okay.
But the safety features, automatic shutoffs or along those lines, any valve that might be leaking, are there automatic shutoffs or any kind of safety device that would automatically eliminate the escaping gases unless the tank itself ruptured?
That's correct. According to NFPA 58, there's a lot of safety things that are put in, like automatic shutoffs and emergency shutoffs.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And those are periodically by law or by state fire code checked and signed off by an inspector?
Yes, sir.
When he inspects it annually or semi-annually or?
Yes, sir. Through the
whatever.
state fire marshal's office, they can, I don't want to say they control it, but they evaluate all the fill sites of propane.
Okay. Who would do the inspection, though, whatever the periodic inspection?
The fire marshal's
requirement?
office, the
Okay.
state level would.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one of my questions is more in regards to the proximity of the high school and vandalism. Is there something that can be put in place? Is this going to be monitored? Are there going to be cameras? I'm not to sort of be negative in the sense that proximity to the school, bored kids, jumping a fence, fiddling with things that's one of the things I was concerned about in reading the proposal, because it's not normal to store fuel so close to a school in this sense.
Excuse me. Aiken High does have several cameras that they monitor the school. I'm not sure if there's one pointed in this direction or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
How explosive is propane in that state?
In the right mixture, I mean, any chemical that is flammable, of course, can be ignited in the right mixture. But if you have a large leak, it's going to be too much. It's going to be too rich. It's kind of like an old gas carburetor. It can be too lean to ignite or too rich to ignite. So it's got to be in the right proportions to have an ignition problem or to be concerned about an ignition source.
Okay.
So we talk about lower and upper explosive limits, and it's got to be within the range of that.
Sure, Judy?
Let me ask you this, gas trucks usually come in and fuel the trucks at Aiken High, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I think they have a gas truck at the bus shop office on Highway 1 that comes and fuels the trucks now. Yes, ma'am.
So can you not do propane like that?
I'm assuming you can. I don't know. I've never had a propane vehicle. I've never seen one operate.
I don't think many of us have.
But I'm sure there's some capabilities of doing that.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board to Aiken safety? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hoffman? I hope public safety has answered all of your questions from your presentation.
Sir, Robert Hoffman, South Carolina Department of Education, Area Supervisor. Address is 309 Bar Road, Lexington, South Carolina.
Thank you. You have a presentation. You've received a copy of the staff report. Do you wish to embellish on that report or respond to and from questions from the board?
I'll just answer the questions that I've heard. Right now, we're in the process of doing 4 new infrastructures. The state of South Carolina has purchased approximately 120 propane buses. Our first infrastructure was installed, I want to believe, last summer down in Somerville, right next to a school where one of the parking locations are. We looked at Aiken High because they have 53 buses located there. The bus shop is approximately 4 miles from the high school. So to travel back and forth, it'd be 8 miles round trip every other day. We've actually looked at putting infrastructure in out at the interstate, but it'd be a round trip of about, I want to say it was 18 miles, no, 10, maybe 28 miles a day round trip or every other day, which would put a large number of miles and a large number of hours for the drivers and drivers' pay to do that. So we're trading out the 50 buses, the 20 buses that they have right now, and putting 20 propane buses over there. We do have a fuel truck that goes over there, I want to say, every day to fuel buses.
That's the diesel buses that are there?
Our primary underground storage tank is at the Aiken School Bus Shop right now, and this is located out on Columbia Highway North, 4 miles from the high school. I went down and looked at America Gas is our state vendor for our propane. Mr. David Dangerfield has came up with electrician. We looked at putting the site in. Where we proposed the site is because we have 2 pumping stations. It's going to be a 2,000 gallon one tank. Originally, we was going to use 2 tanks, but they converted now to just 1 tank. The area is approximately 15 feet by 33 feet long. And at the end of the fuel station, which would be at your end, can I point the map?
Yes.
There's actually a fence right here. The infrastructure would be right here. A fueling station would be right here with 2 pumps. That would allow a bus to come in this direction and fuel up, and a bus to come in this direction and fuel up. All the other locations on this map, or where the location is, it didn't have room for the bus to overhang about 40 feet to do the pumping at. We'd actually looked at putting in a grass down here, but you could only fill up 1 bus at a time. So actually where the location is, they have an exit or entrance and an exit or entrance here too, so the buses can come in both directions.
And the location of the tanks that meet state requirements?
Yes, sir. We, as the fire marshal had talked about, we worked in cooperation with the state facilities up at the Department of Education. They have looked at it. They approved everything. David Dangerfield has contacted the fire marshals, the state fire marshal for the Sumter. They went down and looked at that. They gave their approval. He's working in coordination with everybody, the Department of Education and the state fire marshal for these installations.
And I think the board member that asked a question about other locations, you may restate your question to Mr. Hoffman.
Well, like I say, it just looks like the danger of it to me, I'm a former educator, and
yes, ma'am.
It just bothers me to think that something can happen there because of this gas, and there's no other place that it could be placed.
No, ma'am. With the mileage that we would put on a buses traveling back and forth to the bus lot or out to the location that the district has out by the interstate would be astronomical for miles. I've been assured by David Dangerfield in his minutes, this has about every precaution you could take with safety valves, shut-offs. It's going to have power ran out to it, so power would be shut off every day. Nobody can vandalize and get anything out the tanks. My understanding that the tanks are 20% stronger than any diesel tank, so for ruptures or anything like that, there's a lot of safeguards put into them. So.
Okay. So this is not just a matter of saving money and saving time and stuff like that. This is the best option for.
Yes, ma'am. This is the best option.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank
Sir,
Sir.
one other question.
I'm sorry.
Other question from the board?
Yeah.
Bud?
You say these tanks are 20% engineered so that there's a thick wall?
I was understanding there was 20% thicker than regular diesel tanks.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a double wall tank, it's still a single wall
Just thicker,
tank,
yes, sir.
just stronger.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
Sorry. Who would be fueling the buses? Are the drivers?
The drivers
equipped?
will be taught how to fuel the buses, and they will fuel the buses at their convenience with their schedules coming in every day.
Is that a certification of some sort to be able to, I mean, I know we don't need to be certified to pump our own fuel into our
Yes, ma'am.
cars, understandably, but we're also not necessarily running the gas station. So I'm wondering if there's something in place to be doubly sure that they're handling the fuel short of just, this is how you do it.
No, ma'am. America Gas, which is, again, our contractor, will come up and give formal training, teach one of the drivers who drive their buses. I'm sure that we will get the same training, our technicians and us, and we'll be spot checking, so will the district and their supervisors.
Thank you.
Brenda?
yeah, so I guess just to give me a little background on how it's being done now, we have trucks coming into there and filling
Yes, sir.
buses up?
Yes, sir.
And the primary storage of that diesel is out on US 1?
Yes, sir.
You say 4 miles or whatever it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there's no way to flop that scenario with the propane? In other words, there's not a mobile ability to store and then truck your propane in and do it basically the same way you're doing it?
I don't think there is with what we do in the buses, with their schedules throughout the day. You couldn't have a truck there from the time, because you have to be contracted out to a vendor to do that. America Gas right now, based off of our analysis, he'll come up to Aiken High School every other day to fill the propane tank. I think the overhead cost of what it would cost the state to have somebody come in and tank it and have a tank there to actually fuel the buses would just be astronomical.
Okay, and so the average bus would need to be refueled, the propane bus would need to be refueled every other day, every day?
We're talking probably every other day to start off with, until we can see exactly their mileage, how many gallons they use every day. The tanks on the buses have a 100-gallon tank. You can put about 80% of propane in that. They get about 8 miles to the gallon. So we're looking at, I want to say, and maybe I was wrong, about 350 gallons or 350 miles for one tank of gas. Some of the buses travel out at a longer distance. A lot of them travel right in the Aiken city limits. So it just depends on their routes and their schedules and their mileage that they put on the buses daily.
Okay, and this is an initial 20 bus?
Yes, sir.
I mean, is the plan to convert the entire fleet over time?
Not the entire fleet. We're looking at areas inside the state of South Carolina to put storages, to put infrastructure so that as propane buses travel the interstates and go from Augusta to Greenville to Rock Hill to Charleston, that they have a place that the state has, Department of Education, that we can fuel those buses as they travel through.
Okay, so you hit upon an important point then. So in addition to the 20 school district buses, this terminal, if you will, would also be used for other state-owned vehicles to
For
come in
other
and
Department of
refuel?
Education
Department of Education vehicles
buses,
to
yes,
be.
sir. As they travel, we have one coming through the area, going to maybe Augusta. They can stop and get fuel there too.
Any sort of estimate on what that casual traffic could be?
No. Again, we just, this is the first time, or last year was the first purchase of buses. We purchased, the first round was 29 down at Somerville. That's where the first infrastructure was. We're putting 13 up at Richland 1 up in Columbia. Here, there's 20. Don't know exact number down in Horry County, and then up in Greenville right now. We're also looking at the next go around, putting propane up in Rock Hill, just before the North Carolina border, up at Fort Mill Schools.
Other than the mileage, you know, the 4 miles out and back, is there any other restriction to the existing depot that would prevent you from putting this type of terminal facility there?
It would just be the miles on the buses every other day, and then I guess, in driver's costs to drive the buses out there. It could be done, but just the overhead we looked at could be in the tens of thousands of dollars per year.
Okay, thank you.
One other question. Sir. You indicated there were, how many other locations that will have these buses, these converted buses or these new buses located? Will they be in school, near schools like this one is, where you would have a pumping station like this located on school site?
Somerville is, like I said, it's down right at school where its parking facility is. At Richland 1, it's at their main bus hub, which is right next to the bus shop. They have, I want to say, 88 buses. Up in Greenville, it's parked at the Taylor bus shop, which is Taylor's parking lot right next to the bus shop. They have, I want to say, 140 buses up there. And my understanding, I may be wrong, but the understanding in Horry County, it will be at a bus hub, which is next to a school. So 3 out of the 5 will be located next to a school.
Okay.
John?
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Where do the buses drop the students off presently?
I will defer that to Macon School District.
Okay. Hold that question.
Yes, sir.
My second question is, wouldn't it be more prudent to move the yellow box where the proposed site down behind the baseball field, farther away from the students? If anything were to happen, it would just be farther away, further out of harm's way.
With the present location, the only thing we have to do is the electricity is running there right now. It's a paid parking lot, so buses enter and exit right there as we speak. The infrastructure is just digging holes to put in the pillars, and then it's an underground storage tank, so it sits there. I don't know how it's tied to the ground. But traffic already comes in and out of there. Out where the baseball field, my understanding, I can't answer, you probably have to put some type of pavement in there. There would be electricity have to be ran. All that is where it is right now, is already staged, it's ready to go. And I want to say too that the cost for this is all funded by the South Carolina Department of Education. There's no funding that nobody has to do. We are funding everything.
Any further question for Mr. Howard?
Mr. Chairman, I understand from a potential budgetary standpoint, I don't know a lot about fuels. I have a diesel. I know that runs great, has great gas mileage. I'm assuming propane is more efficient and environmentally friendly, and
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
why the switch.
Propane's more friendly. I want to say the last numbers was 26 to 30% cheaper than running a diesel. Diesel we're paying right now, I think the last cost was $2.27 a gallon.
Right.
Propane is $1.31 what we paid. I just heard in a meeting we had the other day that we get a 50% or 50-cent refund back on every gallon of propane that we buy too. So if that's true, 50 from 80 cents a gallon what we're paying for propane.
So if the switch to propane helped save money in that aspect, from a safety standpoint, and this goes back to one of the other queries regarding could the fuel still not be trucked in addressing more of the safety issue of storage tanks so close to a school, money could still be saved because the fuel has been switched. It's cheaper, it's more economical. My hesitation is storing it on the property. That makes me nervous, so close to, a school. But I understand the drive, no pun intended, as far as the savings. So I'm just curious if it's understandably not shipping it in on top of that, but your money's already being saved just with the switch to the actual type of fuel, correct?
Well, and overall operation of the bus, the cost of the bus, the savings that we get 20 to 26 to 30%, plus in the cost of fuel. And again, I don't know what it would cost to have somebody come in and fuel every day. That would probably be astronomical. It would be a contract vendor that would have to come down versus our drivers or the district drivers that do that.
But that's what was happening with the diesel fuel.
No, ma'am. Diesel fuel, actually the state, South Carolina Department of Education, the bus
Okay.
shop, it actually fuels the buses.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions from the board to Mr. Hoffman? Thank you. A representative from the school board, please. would you read yourself into the minutes with your name and address, please?
Yes, sir.
And
Sean
position?
Foster, Chief of Operations and Student Services for Aiken County Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. John?
Yes, where do the kids get dropped off and picked up
Where the
presently?
students, where they're presently dropped off now, actually, you can't see it on this. It's to your far right. It's a new bus drop-off, so it's not actually on this actual picture here. It's right now, right in this area here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Where's the student parking lot?
Student parking lot is actually on the front side of the school, so that's on the,
That was once the student parking lot, I believe, in the back. where
in the
now
back,
the
probably prior to me being here, maybe, but it's actually on the front side on Rutland Drive.
Back when
So
my
both
kids-
student parking are there as now currently.
Back when my kids were there, that was a student parking lot.
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if I could add a few comments for
Yes,
you all
you
to
may.
consider to help clarify many things. First of all, the bringing the gas in and fueling, it was a great question. But there's also some functionality and some benefits to the transportation office to have the fueling tanks there. Most people think that it's just about dropping students off and picking them up in the morning, but also we have field trips. So there are often times where if a fueling truck's not coming, it's a strain or a coordination issue on the back end where if this bus is low, because it runs every day to drop them off, so that bus is low on fuel, then it impacts a field trip that may be going on during the day when we use or contract or permit state buses as well. So it only provides some flexibility to the bus shop in that regard. So instead of saying, well, let's find out what buses we think have enough gas to do this particular field trip, we're able to have our trained, certified folks go to the tank, fill it up, and ensure that not only do we run that field trip, but we have enough gas also for that bus to get back on campus and run its elementary, middle, and high school routes as well. So those are some things that I think that are functional that many people may not understand. It's a field trip. We have a ton of field trips as we're trying to increase the number of field trips. Also, the cost of the propane versus the diesel. But what I envision is having that cost, we have to sometimes transfer that cost to students in the cost of the field trip to do the fueling. So for me, at this point, we're trying to now not move that cost to students because every child can't afford that. And our philosophy is that every child should deserve access or the opportunity to participate. So we've put in some funds to offset that. So those are some things to consider as well. The flexibility, but also the cost that now we don't have to incur as a school district, but also don't have to push onto any students in the cost of that particular field trip. We eat the mileage now. It's just that simple. We as a district said, we're not charging, so I have to often find funds to say, we're going to make sure that this doesn't impede a student from going on a field trip. Nobody wants to I have 2 children, and I want them to go on the field trip, and when I get the cost of a field trip, sometimes you're like, wow, that's a good outing for me and my wife to go on there. So those are things to consider as well. Just wanted to put that out there. Also, don't know if it was mentioned, the tank where it currently sits is in proper distance, but the building that's actually closest to it won't be there anymore. It's going to be demolished, and we're going to fence in. I heard that mentioned earlier. The entire campus is the actual plan at the end to fence in that entire campus. We already have approval for phase 1 fencing, and I have those plans as well that's been approved by OSF and our architects as well. So we're going to put some additional safety parameters there. Safety is our top priority. If we didn't vet, and I asked a whole bunch of questions first and foremost, because that does ring an alarming bell when you hear that. But after doing research and talking to a number of individuals, I wouldn't be standing here as a school official who's charged with making sure everybody's safe every day. And speaking on behalf of this change, if safety was a concern of ours.
When you mention safety, are you including security?
I'm talking about safety in every regard.
Thank you.
I heard about cameras. We will have an extensive camera system that we're putting in. We started in phase 1. To put a camera there, that's not an unreasonable request, and not anything that we can't do in this phase as we continue to do that. So in that regard, that hopefully answers that question as well.
Thank you.
it just does provide some flexibility for the school district in many regards. And I can continue to go on and on. To have 20 additional new buses and be able to trade out the older buses. The reality is we've had circumstances you guys have seen in the news where some older buses have caught on fire. So, we're talking about a stabilized tank that has built-in safety parameters, or continuing to transport some students on buses that are older that we know potentially every day can catch on fire. We've had some here in Macon County, sad to say, not very many. It was a while back, but to know we have safer buses who we know kids are going to be on every single day. To me, and looking at the safety parameters, it's a win-win. It's a win-win. And that's what we're trying to do every day, is just get better.
Other questions from the board? Go ahead. Then Judy.
So you would not be upset if your children went to Aiken High with the facility, with the gasoline right there on campus?
My daughter will be, if my daughter reaches high school, she will be going to Aiken High.
Okay.
So to
So
answer your
that's not a
question,
concern?
yes, ma'am, not a
Okay.
concern of mine at all. It's not about my child. I wouldn't put any child.
Yeah, but
in that
sometimes you need to
regard.
consider your own right there a little bit.
Exactly. No, ma'am, but if my child is so great, like I said, if she keeps doing well and gets to high school, which she will, she'll be going to Aiken. She's a sixth grader, so she has some time.
A little bit.
But
Do you envision, sir, that with these 20 buses that you're going to get, do you envision your entire bus fleet soon expanding or utilizing propane? Thanks, sir. Is that a question for the State Department of Education?
Rashad, yeah. And Rashad, Mr. Rowland and Mr. Hoffman. Question, first of all, was,
Would you have them-
that would be my hope, to
have
have
them read themselves
Read
into the
into the
minutes,
minutes.
please. Name and address, please.
Rashad Rowland, Aiken Area Transportation Supervisor, 449 Rutland Drive, Aiken, South Carolina.
Thank you.
My hope would be that we can have all our buses to become propane, because again, it does provide us flexibility and efficiency across the board, and it also gives us new buses, that they're all would be new. So to answer your question, and I asked this gentleman to come up to kind of give some stats on, with the additional 20 buses, the oldest bus we would have in that lot versus where we are now would be what?
2006 model.
2006 model. So, we're looking at buses being at the oldest 12 years versus our oldest bus now is
95 and 88.
a 95 and 88. So we have an opportunity to, and those are the buses that concern us the most as well.
And just to say, the location down Somerville, they are adding more propane buses on this year. So as we order propane buses in the future, at present locations, we will add more buses on as we replace the older fleet too.
If your fleet expands, though, let's assume it's going to expand to more than 20 buses, and your current, if this is approved, this current fueling station has, you said one tank,
2,000 gallons.
2,000-gallon tank. Do you envision having an additional storage need to handle the extra buses that, or the rest of the bus fleet when it's replaced with propane buses? Or will this 2,000-gallon tank be sufficient for?
It should be sufficient for what we have, because as I said, we planned on our analysis was every other day. If need be, the contractor can come every day to fill the tank.
And as the number of buses expand, I assume it'll be not just Area 1, but Area 2 and Area 3 in our school district. So those will have to have their own fueling tanks, is that correct?
No, ma'am, they will continue to have diesel buses right now at the other locations.
So why are they not getting propane buses?
Because Aiken High was picked for its location and because of the number of the buses it serves right now.
Okay.
If I can add one other thing, and Mr. Hoffman doesn't know this, it's going to be my request. We were given, and thankfully, some new diesel buses just last year. Don't know the exact number, but I would love to be able to take and ask those diesel buses to go to another shop to replace the 98s. So this helps us at one area have updated buses, but it could potentially have two areas. instead of, doesn't leave me to have new diesel buses go back that we got last year and not be able to utilize those and get rid of older buses and have all diesel new in one area. So it has a ripple effect and to help a variety of students. So I just thank you all for your consideration, and I'm glad to answer any additional questions you may have.
Do we have any additional questions for the school board? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
But
I'll make the motion that we approve application 19-93003, which is a variance to section 4.3.5 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 2,000 gallon above-ground propane storage tank to be installed at the location described in the attached site plan on the property at 449 Rutland Avenue, that the plans and specific siting be approved by the state fire marshal, and that the school board seriously consider the addition of security cameras at that location to check and secure that area, and that the final order is recorded at the Aiken County RMC office.
I second.
it's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion?
I guess I'd like to probably interject to the board members how everyone's comfort level is on the overall safety aspect of it based on the presentation that we heard. Anybody care to comment on that? Has everybody's safety threshold been met?
I can comment to that, too, at least based on my experience in the industrial and manufacturing arena. I was part of an installation of 10,000 gallon propane tanks in a tank farm that was located in the middle of our industrial complex with residential area not located too far away, within, I would say, within eighth of a mile of where our propane tank system was. And the purpose of that whole system was to back up natural gas should we lose natural gas. But I can say that based on that, now this technology was 20 years ago, but I can say that the technology that we included at that time had safety written all over it, because I could look outside my office window and see those 10,000 gallon tanks. And so I think with what they've described and the safety features, excuse me for my back, the safety features that are there now, and I'm sure that the state fire marshal has scrutinized this system up one side, down the other, that where it's located and the efforts that they're making to make sure it's safe, secure, watched 24/7, that it's the right thing to do, especially from a buses standpoint, the economy of running buses on propane and the safety features that are incorporated in buses nowadays with propane, I would think would exceed that of buses that maybe are using gasoline or even diesel. But I don't know that for sure. But this from a personal standpoint and from my experience, that location, yeah, there are concerns, but from what they've outlined, you know, I don't see a problem with it. For what it's worth, sir.
I agree entirely what Mr. Calvin has said, but I would like to see added to the motion that we incorporate Aiken Public Safety. I understand about the state fire marshal, but I would also love to have our local authorities have direct responsibility as well, since they are integral in this operation.
That's an amendment to the motion I made. Is that,
I am addressing it, and I'll let the motion maker consider whether or not to add it as an amendment.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would consider, yes, I agree.
I agree too.
I'll second that.
Do we have any further discussion? Those in favor of the amended motion, show by raising the right hand. Those opposed? 5-1. The motion is carried. I call your attention to application 19-92002. We have a special exception request to permit a self-storage facility, a self-service storage facility on property that's zoned general business. And that property is located at 187 Fabian Drive. To the city, has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
We received one inquiry from a neighboring property owner that did not wish to be specifically acknowledged, but was concerned about the statement that the property would drain and use for stormwater management the pond directly adjacent to the site. And just for clarification, is that the any stormwater plans related to that site have not been reviewed yet. If a special exception is permitted, the use being permitted, it would go through the normal site plan review process in which stormwater management, all utilities, site planning, buffers, landscaping, all that would be reviewed specifically. And so while that statement was made, it's not been verified by the city engineer calculation-wise.
The pond that's there has handled current rainfall as much as no problems.
Right, so the current, the site, my understanding in speaking with the city engineer is that the site currently drains off to that pond, but is currently mostly impervious surface. So the concern would be any additional runoff from adding impervious surface rather than pervious surface. Yeah. Impervious surface is what would specifically be looked at as far as whether that would be able to be sent toward that pond or not.
And I think we're getting ahead of your presentation.
All right. Presentation. We're switching modes to a special exception. Probably remiss in not explaining the differences all the time. But again, a special exception is something is different than a variance, and it has different criteria and is generally seen as something potentially allowed in a zone district if the criteria established in the zoning ordinance are met. And in this case, the subject parcel is 187 Fabian Drive. While it has a Fabian Drive access, the primary frontage is Pawnee Street. The site is currently mostly vacant. It has about a 5,000 square foot structure on there that has been identified as being used for storage as far as I could tell. Other than that, I've not gotten much information on that existing building. The site, roughly 3 acres, is zoned general business, in which case self-service storage facilities are permitted by special exception only in the general business district. All surrounding properties are zoned general business, and this is kind of a unique situation that Pawnee is kind of a secondary access through that area. While it does provide some additional relief to Doherty Road eventually and Fabian Drive, Pine Log Road. Most buildings currently constructed in the area, all other adjacent lots are developed, but essentially turn their back on this particular site. So it's kind of unique in that sense, is that's kind of the single undeveloped lot that's not the pond in the vicinity and zone general business at this point. So with that, staff would be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Is that building part of the property?
The building is on the property, correct. So that there is a, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of a residential looking building, but it's there. You kind of see it in the picture there, but not real good. But the best I could tell is that it's used for. It was listed as at least on the county records as storage. Maybe the applicant could provide more information on what is actually in there.
The only way that I could figure to get in is climb the fence, and I refuse to do that.
Right. And so the picture here you see, so I provided a couple pictures just for context in the packet. The first picture here, you can kind of see this is looking north on Pawnee Street toward Fabian Drive. That you see on the left is kind of the back of the structures of the retail center. And then from the retail center parking lot, this is kind of looking down on the site across the street from essentially kind of the delivery and loading area in the back of those buildings. I think I was behind Academy Sports at that point.
Questions from the board to the city?
When I was there, it was posted, but the sign had fallen away
Okay.
from this, and I went and put it back up, but the tape didn't want to stick, so.
We did go out and retape it at one point.
What's that?
We did go out and retape. It did that previously, and when we checked the sites periodically, and we did retape it at some point. We do have. We ran out of the gray signs, had to order new gray signs, and so we're working through some taping issues with that. So we've been trying to monitor them. So yeah, we'll try to keep paying attention to that.
I just wanted to call the stickiness issue to your attention.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's kind of a newness of the signs issue. We've been having to reinforce them kind of more than typical.
And maybe maybe the owner or the applicant can address this, but based on the drawing, this drawing right here, if you put that up,
Oops. Uh-oh.
the building layout,
I did my own song. Looks like I did not, sorry, I don't have that in the.
okay. Yeah. Good. It appears that one of the proposed storage building is going to impact the existing building there. So I presume they're going to tear the building down or a portion of the building down for that 15,000 square foot storage unit.
Correct, that's my understanding, is that the existing structure on site would be removed as part of reconstruction.
The entrance, then the main entrance to the facility then will be off of, what?
Pawnee.
Pawnee.
It'd be Pawnee Street.
So nowhere else. You could, at least currently, you could come in through a gate that was locked through a parking lot, but that won't exist anymore, right? The only access and entrance and exit will be at that Pawnee Road intersection. Is that right?
The applicant could probably verify that. It's kind of mostly just submitted as a conceptual plan at this point. I guess I would treat that as, but it would be subject to review. We would typically we would allow access from one street, whether public safety would want to keep another entrance, related to fire prevention, things like that. Sometimes they allow those as like a crash gate type entrance rather than a full access. But again, we haven't gotten to that level of detail with the review of a site plan yet.
Brian, what is the path? It looks like it's 77 feet between the property line and the buildings. And it runs, I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Gas line.
I believe that's the gas line easement,
Okay, thank you.
the high pressure gas line easement.
Any further questions to the city? Thank you. The applicants?
I'm Tilden Hildebrand with Hassan Hildebrand, 133 Greenville Street here in Aiken. I'm representing KHO Development. I'm here tonight with Christian Wall, who is the developer, and hopefully between the two of us, we can answer any questions that you have. I would like to embellish just for a second on the nice report that Ryan and his group did, just maybe to explain a little bit more about our site plan, the area, and a few of the questions that came up. I think you're probably all familiar with the area, so if you would just indulge me for a second. This is the detention pond, regional detention pond that serves the shopping center over here and a large area around here. And this property does drain currently into that pond. Obviously, we'll go through the stormwater review process and accommodate all the requirements related to that. This is a high-pressure gas easement on the site that runs through much of that side of Aiken, goes through the shopping center near the corner of the Panda Express area over on the corner. I think there's 2 high-pressure gas lines here. This is, the site really is on Pawnee Street, in that this is Pawnee. All of our access would be off Pawnee. There's a little finger that goes down here over to Fabian that, for some reason, somebody decided they needed a Fabian address. So I don't know whether that was Weldon White owned this building at one time. It was his office. Marty Gillum with Gillum and Associates, or Billy Gillum, his dad, bought the property. They used it as storage. They laid down a lot of materials for their projects inside this fence. And I'll say there was a lot of junk in here at one time. That building is cleaned out. It will be demolished. It's a residential style building in pretty bad shape. It will be demolished to accommodate the building itself and the drive aisles here. This is an access easement that goes through the engineering office parking lot over here. That easement in this, as part of this project, will be traded for an easement that they have to accommodate some overlap parking there. So that access easement will go away. The site itself is, again, surrounded by a detention pond, the back of the engineering office, the back of a daycare center, the back of another daycare center, and the back of 2 commercial strip buildings over here. So we're pretty much surrounded by the less desirable side of all the neighbors. I think that hits on everything I wanted to hit on. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
Any question from the board to Mr. Hildebrand? Judy?
My concern is that the daycare centers, you know, what's going to happen to them during your construction of these, you know, units? It has to be considerable. Or are you going to work at night?
I don't think so. I can't speak for the owner, but I don't think they will work at night. And I will probably ask him to come up because he's actually spoken to the two daycare owners next door. Typical construction process is to obviously minimize sound, dust, anything that would disturb your neighbor. This is not really an operation, a construction operation that would require big cranes or extremely large equipment. The site is basically graded already. So I don't think that there would be a lot of unusual disturbance of the neighbors. Both of these daycare centers have a tree buffer in the back. We will leave a buffer, and there are playground areas. The buildings aren't pressed up against the back property line, so there is some space there. Christian may or may not want to address. I know he's spoken to the daycare owners and operators, and they didn't have any objection. The only thing that they requested was when our kids throw balls across the fence, how about throw them back? And there are a lot of balls on the site.
One other thing, is there going to be somebody on the facility full-time?
Yes.
Okay.
There will be a person that, come on up, Christian. Christian Wall is the developer.
Would you let him read himself into the minutes, please?
Yes, sir. Christian Wall, 404 Averett Way, Evans, Georgia.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have a full-time on-site manager. I spoke to one of the owners of the daycare on the left, and the other one, the owner wasn't there, but the manager was. They were very, they were just good to deal with, so they appreciate us being there. There's already a fence between us, so I don't think construction is going to be a problem. That type of construction is a slab, metal buildings that you put up with screw guns. It's very simple, so I don't think it would be much impact at all. And like I said, I tried to go ahead and establish a relationship. They were very nice to me and seemed like it was going to be easy.
But
When I went to the site today, I came in through the double gate on, is it Fabian?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was open. I drove in.
Pawnee was open. Fabian's usually closed.
I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Pawnee, I drove in through that gate onto the site and then just looked around and came right out. But I noticed on the left what appeared to be kind of a low area between your lot and the daycare center. It just appeared to be. I didn't get out and walk it or anything like that, high grass and so forth. But I'm hearing that all stormwater, since this is going to be a paved site now with your buildings on it, a lot of runoff from the buildings and so forth, but all that stormwater will go to the pond. It won't drain off on the daycare center lot or lots or the street or anything like that. You'll capture it and put it into the pond.
Correct. And I think what you're seeing, Tilden can maybe speak to that, is that should be either an old storm catch basin that's abandoned or it's still active and it's already going to the pond.
Okay.
But that's why we're
Just
saying-
hard to tell with the growth.
There was actually a storm drain that ran through this site here, so there may be some depression related to that. That was rerouted when the Pawnee-Nielsen connector was done, so it's on the perimeter now. Keep in mind, too, that all of this area back here will remain grassed because we've got this gas line to deal with, and we can't pave on top of that. So the hard surfaces are the buildings here and the paved strips between those.
Okay.
And we've done these funny jogs in it so we can route a fire truck around through the development here.
How many feet between from the buildings to the property line on that left side?
Up here
Where
on
the gas
top.
line's going to be, yeah.
Let's see.
I think it's 77.
Okay, just double.
That's where you had mentioned 77.15 feet.
Okay. Okay.
Another quick clarification, it may not be relevant, but this whole place will be climate controlled. We're not doing the old conventional roll-up doors. You won't even see that. It's just corridors, climate controlled, cameras, trying to keep it kind of upscale. As we've surveyed all the different storage sites in town, everybody's 100% occupied. You can't even find one, or I couldn't at the time. So I think it's going to service the.
You'll be the owner-operator?
I may start the management phase for 6 months, but I'll turn it over to an operator.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to the special exception request? Final call, others to speak to the special exception? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Judy?
I recommend that we accept application number 19-92002 with the following conditions. Approval is granted to have an approximately 44,000 square foot self-service storage facility on property zone general business at 187 Fabian Drive, more specifically identified by tax parcel number 122-1302-022. The final order is to run with the land and be recorded at the Aiken County RMC office. I feel like they've met all of the conditions, and I also feel like that this is a really good location for that type of it's not going to have that much increase in traffic, and like I say, I feel like it's a good placement for it.
Do we have a second?
I second. Go ahead. Of course.
John was, I heard him first. It's been properly moved and second that we accept the special application. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. That's the last item on the agenda. The chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I second.
We stand adjourned.